right. Hello, everybody. All right. So, yes, this is our new official time. Actually, I don't want to call it an official time. Oh, I put my mic on a mic stand. That way I don't have to be leaning. Hello, Raimo. Nice to see you. Oh, negative 30C. Woo. Wow. So, yes, so we're gonna. Well, I want to do this time now. Maybe the wrong word is time. I want to do this general time. I made it 9:30 today because I had to take my wife to work. So, um, yeah. So I'm experimenting with Saturday mornings right now. I think. Hello, Barry. Nice to see you. I think that might work better. So, and I want to get started with a response to somebody who left a comment on my Joy to the World video. And he started with a compliment, and I accept the compliment, and my response is not ill intended. So I just want to use his comment as a springboard for discussion. Let me type here and see if I can read it exactly. This is the kind of comment I don't know. I don't want to say that I don't like the other comments. Of course, I like the other comments too. And if you guys can't hear me, let me know. Let's see. Comments. Where's my comments? Yeah, I want to read this. He says, nice cantavile playing. Unfortunately, you are propelling the myth that the first phrase is 8 bars long. It isn't. It's only 7 bars. That's part of its charm. Always consider the source when arranging. Otherwise, you're simply adding unnecessary elements. Okay, so I'm assuming what he means by the source is the original is written by Felix Mendelssohn. So when he says the source, I think he's probably talking about the original composition that had that tune in it, right? But here's the thing. It's not a myth that is 8 bars. It's a practice, not a myth. It is a practice. You know what? I think saying that we are supposed to make that 7 bars is sort of like saying, because there's a bunch of hymns in the hymn book from the 18th century. Is it 18th century? Maybe 19th century. There's a bunch of hymns in the hymn books that were originally bar songs from London, I think. And saying that you have to play this exactly the way it was in the original is sort of like if you were to apply that same concept would be to say that we need to sing all of those hymns like bar songs, like drinking songs. And I mean, that's ridiculous. And the truth is, there is common practice in all types of music. So he did, uh, because I don't remember adding that extra measure in that arrangement, right? So he did inspire me, if that, for lack of a better word, he did inspire me to look at the original manuscript that I got the piece from. I pulled it back out. The way I do my arrangements, I actually pull out the hymn, and then I'll show you guys. I always do a traditional harmonic analysis I'm doing these harmonic analyses on a regular basis. So I even try to do the right inversions. That's actually not necessary when I'm writing a trumpet duet because we won't ever have those bass notes. Um, but it's for me, I like to be accurate. Sometimes I don't, like, for example, there's a place in here where it goes to an inversion, and I didn't write the inversion, right? But for the most part, I put the inversions in there, just like college, right? Just like what we are taught in college. So that's the first thing I do. So yes, I did take it from quote unquote the source, but I think what he's talking about is the source, the original source, um, which I have no doubt I'm not familiar with the original source. I don't even need to be familiar because, as I was saying, in all styles of music, there is common practice. And it's common practice in Christmas carols to extend that seventh bar to make it, in this case, that seventh bar has a fermata on it. So that's what I pulled it out, was to check, did I put that extra bar in there? Or was it in the music I was analyzing? And in a sense, because it's got the fermata on there, um, it was already there. But I'm convinced that I would have added the extra measure anyway. Let's start with the hymns first, right? Because this is from a hymn book. There are a lot of hymns where it is common practice to add extra beats, to add extra measures, sometimes to take measures away, sometimes to take beats away. There is a lot of that kind of stuff. And I'm going to say once again, in all styles of music, there's common practice in jazz, there's common practice in orchestral music. One of my favorite examples in orchestral music is the Leonore call in Beethoven's, the trumpet call in Beethoven's Leonore Overture, right? And there's two versions of this. And if you were to play it exactly the way it's written, and please let me know if you can't hear me, okay? If you play it exactly the way it's written, it does not sound right, right? I'm playing the wrong one. Okay, there's two of them, and I'm not reading it. Let me play the other one because I don't remember the easy one. That's the original, the way it's written. And my teacher, my last trumpet teacher, who was working with me for preparing auditions, said the reason this simple excerpt is on all the lists is because they want to know. Barry says, we'll catch up later. I'm in UK. Great Britain have to have tea and food. All right. So he says that the reason that these this simple excerpt is in the list for the audition is because they want to know if you know common practice. They don't want to hire someone for their orchestra that can just play the notes. Okay? They want someone that knows, this month in December, We are starting a new series. I'm calling it the Trumpet Culture series. Okay? And basically, in that audition, why we're playing that excerpt is because they want to know if you're part of this culture or if you're just trying to get a gig. If you're just trying to get a gig, you're only going to do so much that to learn the notes, learn the rhythms. You're not going to dig deep into it and find out what is common practice. Okay? Here's what that same excerpt sounds like when it's done according to how the common practice in the trumpet community, in the orchestra community is. I played the wrong note. Let's start over. Sorry about that. I shouldn't be playing it on this horn. Something like that. Now, I'm not an orchestral player anymore. And I'm sure there's people that could do a better job at that than what I just did, right? But the point is, you don't just play the rhythm. And that's like the most exaggerated example of what I'm talking about. There's all kinds of examples just in the orchestral community alone. There are literally thousands of examples of things that you do. In fact, you know, one of the I don't remember who said this, but I remember hearing a famous orchestra player or maybe a soloist or something say that the music is what happens between the notes. So no, we don't just stick to what's written, right? It is so this thing about this extra measure. You know, whether it had the fermata or not, I would have extended it anyway. I would have extended it anyway. I grew up singing this music in church. And yes, this guy's right. There were on rare occasions organists or music directors or whatever that would stick to the 7 bars. And that's fine too. On rare occasions that would happen, but almost always. So for example, it's got the fermata on it, right? Now let's talk about hymns. Hymns are this is not Felix Mendelssohn's composition, it's his tune. We're not playing a Felix Mendelssohn composition. We're playing a hymn, a Christmas carol based on the tune, and they call it Antioch. Oh wait, I'm looking. Oh yes, right. Oh, I'm looking at not Felix Mendelssohn. Why am I? Because I'm. No, I'm not perfect, huh? Now we have It's not Felix Mendelssohn. I said Felix Mendelssohn because I'm writing an arrangement of "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," and that's what was stuck in. This is Handel, not Mendelssohn. But the same thing. It doesn't matter who it was, right? What I'm saying is, all this time I've been saying. So the tune is Antioch. Okay? The Christmas carol is based on the tune Antioch. It is no longer the original. And that's what I'm trying to get across. the cultural side of this is more important than the physical side. Yes, Laraimo, I started wondering when the rhythm got mixed up with notes. Initially, there were only sounds, then notes, melodies, and then music was destroyed by rhythm. That's an interesting concept. That's an interesting concept. You know, a lot of people, so the whole relationship between the rhythms and the actual melodies. I don't want to say the word notes because notes um indicate that independence of the melody, right? So um one of the things I tell my students is that the rhythms are actually more powerful in communicating than the notes are. Because if I play the wrong notes with the right rhythms, you can tell what the song is. But if I play the right notes with the wrong rhythms, it can be completely unrecognizable. So, but there is what you're saying there is a disconnect between the notes and the rhythms in the way we learn, right? I think just in our progress, the way we learn music, I think that the rhythms, and I know a lot of people will disagree with me. I've been really digging deep into this subject for a long time. I think the rhythms need to come in terms of the way the mind works. The rhythms need to come after the notes. If we learn something, now we want to, a lot of people will say that we have to learn it slow first. I think we have to learn first without rhythm, not slow, without rhythm, so that your mind can sort of, almost as if there's a fermata on every note, right? So when you play those notes in sequence, you're going from one note to the other to the next. You're developing a pattern, a physical pattern that's replicable in your mind, right? So so yes, I do believe there's a disconnect there. Now I understand what people say about. I keep cutting myself off again. It's been so long since I've done one of these. It's like all that work I put into stopping cutting myself off is all out the window. Let me slow down a little bit so I can stop doing that. Um, gather my thoughts real quick. So, a lot of people teach that because of the way that the notes are begun, we need to learn the rhythms first, the mental side of that. And there's truth to that. There's truth to that. The rhythm is what drives the notes. But in practice, when it's something that you don't know yet, when you haven't learned the material yet, the rhythm cannot drive notes that are not in the mind yet. If you haven't stored those notes, that sequence of notes in your mind yet, the rhythms can't drive those notes. So I do believe that the notes have, in terms of procedure, in terms of coming up with a procedure that works, the notes must be learned first. And That's difficult to understand because in reality, what happens when you're playing is the other way around. And that makes it difficult to fathom, to understand. That's what I'm saying. Ramos says, I think rhythm existed before melodies. That's absolutely true. So, and I think that's what a lot of people are saying. So you have that aspect, and you have that other aspect of how the mind works when you're actually at a higher level. When you're functioning at a high level, that's how the mind works. The rhythm drives the notes. Both of those things are true. But when it comes to the procedure that works to learn a piece, to learn material that you don't know yet, that theory that the rhythm comes first does not apply to learning the material. And yet, I think a lot of people think of it that way. I do believe that learning rhythms first is a great way to approach stuff like um, sight reading and improvisation, because in that context, you're not allowed to in that context, right? So let's say you're improvising the rhythms matter most, right? If you get a rhythm that communicates and the notes that come out were not the notes you intended, that's far more successful than when the notes come out properly and but the rhythms are not um communicating. The same thing is true. The best sight readers are the ones that continue to play the right rhythm even though the notes have completely deteriorated. So you can have someone, you kind of improvise your notes under when you're, a lot of people think that the great sight readers are the ones that don't miss the notes. The great sight readers are the ones that don't miss the rhythms. Notes get missed all the time. That's just a fact of trumpet life. Um, I hope that makes sense. So yes, this is a very important part of now. This guy said, getting back to the comment that I was responding to, I can't believe I mixed up Mendelssohn and Handel. So, like I said, it was because I'm working on this new piece now. Um, so getting back to what he said that's part of the charm. And I don't want to dispute that if you like it with that measure taken out, right? If you like that first phrase as a 7-bar phrase, there's nothing says that you have to add the extra bar. Like I said, uh, for me in my life, uh, uh, as a Christian, going to church, singing this stuff every year, year after year after year after year, there were rare occasions when we did it that way. I can tell you, how rare is it? Usually, when they do it as a 7th bar, the congregation is caught off guard after every 7th bar, right? Every time you do that 7th bar, they go into the next verse, the next line in the verse, and the people are like, "What happened?" Because it's not what they're expecting. Why is it not what they're expecting? Is because that's not the common practice. 7 bars is not common practice. Now, here's something else I will concede, is that maybe the common practice where I was is not the same as common practice where he lives. That's always a possibility, right? Maybe where he's at, they stick strictly to the 7 bar phrase. And maybe at his church, where he grew up singing this all the time, maybe at his church, they do the 7 bars and nobody's jolted by a 7 bar phrase. Um, I think it's probably wrong to assume that I just made it 8 bars because I have a problem with odd bar phrases, because almost all these duets that I've done uh in this series, I consider this series to go back to the hymn duets, right? Because I'm treating them the same way. The way I wrote those hymn duets is the same way that I'm writing these Christmas carol duets. And in a bunch of those, the hymns and the Christmas carols, I extended phrases. I shorten some of them, I extend some of them to make them interesting. So, yes, there's there's part of the charm by making things a little bit different from normal. I agree with him on that. Just not in this case, right? So anyway, um yeah, so if anyone has any questions, just let me know. I see that I spent like a whole half hour talking about that. Um, yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, I think it'll take a little bit of time to get people to know that we're doing this on Saturday mornings now. I think this works a little better for the people in Europe. Of course, not if it's at dinner time. Huh? So what is it? 8 hours would be um yeah, that's about dinner time over there. Anyway, what else? Let me look at my other comments, see if I can respond to those. Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions here. Okay, here's some question from Raquel. Um, how do you change to higher notes? Also, I understand that you blow to play, but can inhaling make notes too? Let's talk about that one first. Please do not inhale the trumpet. Please don't inhale. Um, because there's some nasty stuff in the trumpet. Okay. Uh, there's basically mostly fungus. Raimo says that it's 1,800 hours in Finland, so that's good. Yeah. So yes, don't suck on the instrument, right? Don't breathe the air in, because there is a problem with fungus. We don't want that fungus in your lungs. I don't. This is not scientific. It's just common sense, okay? When you clean your trumpet, there's like this slimy stuff that comes out. That slimy stuff, according to my understanding, that slimy stuff is fungus. And it just doesn't make any sense to me to put to breathe in fungus into your lungs. So please don't do that. And there's also valve oil in there and stuff like that. I just don't think it's a good idea to even experiment with that. The other question was, how do you make notes go up and down? Now, the scientific answer to that is that you increase the resistance. Now, what is the resistance? Either you increase the resistance or you keep the resistance the same and you increase the air. There are different ways physically of playing the trumpet. Some people will increase the air. Some people will increase only the resistance. Some people will increase both resistance and air. In the way I teach, we keep the air constant and we change the resistance to play higher. Now, the primary way that we change that resistance is with the curl of the lips, and I'll give you a demonstration of the lip buzz. This used to be better before I had the beard, so you can't see much. Now I'm going to do arpeggios so you can see how the lips curl in for the high notes and curl out for the low notes. Now see how much rolled out it is for that low note? And then compared to so we have really pretty extreme. Now, how much it rolls in is less as you go higher. How much it rolls out is more as you go lower. And this has to do with the what is called the golden ratio, right? We can visualize how much movement it takes to get from one note to the next by taking into account the golden ratio. And I've been working on a video about the golden ratio and how to me, the golden ratio is the evidence of why trumpet playing is more than 90% mental. Oh, Anthony's here. Hello, Anthony. Happy holiday to you too. I missed Raimo's comment. I think we are too fixed to rhythms. I try to separate melodies from rhythms by playing songs different. Tonogos as waltzes, etc. Yeah, a lot of people, that's a great approach. That's I read a book one time about the guy that created the Dewey Decimal System. So Dewey, I don't remember his first name. Dewey had this book about creativity. And one of the things that he talked about was this altering what you already had. And that falls in category with that. I used that book, the concept from that book. It was a library book, so I didn't keep it. Now that libraries don't keep books, I wish I had horked it. But so there's a bunch of books that I can't find now that if I had known the library was going to trash all of them, I would have kept all of them. But anyway, so yes, that's a thing. Changing things, it's one of the lower levels of creativity, in my opinion, but that's actually a thing. I think that's good practice. Anyway, So, what were we talking about? I forgot what we were talking about. Oh, I'm out of practice, huh? I apologize to you guys. I had gigs for a few weeks in a row, and then last week I was just so tired. I just couldn't do this. Um, I feel better now. So last week I had a gig with my band, and all the stuff preparing for it. It just wiped me out. Raimo says that microphone gives good sound. What is it? Um, it's um, a blue Pro or blue Yeti Pro. It's the Pro one. They call it Pro. It's the yeah. So blue Yeti Pro, and they call it Pro because it's got both XLR and USB. So we bought it so that my wife could do her voiceovers with a more appropriate microphone. And I ended up using it more than she is. I use it for my lessons. Um, but yes, it's a Blue Yeti or Yeti Blue. I don't know. So let me go back to here. I got off track. Oh, talking about how to get higher notes. And I was talking about the overtone series and the golden ratio. As you go higher, the changes that you make in your oral cavity, in your lips, and all that stuff become more subtle. So, and that's why it's so hard to play high. It's not because it takes more physical effort. And in fact, when we try to play with more physical effort on the high notes, it doesn't work. It makes it harder. It makes it worse, not better. It makes us sound bad. The key to playing higher is to get those subtle differences between from this note to that note. The change in the lips is you can't even feel that. So the way you do that is you train your body through trial and error. You train your mind, you train your body through trial and error to subconsciously find the right position and the right air pressure and all that for that note. And by the way, that's why I start my students on the lowest notes from the very beginning. My students will play all the way down to low F sharp. So this, I'm making this up, but this would be a typical A2 that I have my students play. Now, for the beginners, that's as long as the A2 gets in my system. But you see how we went up to E and then down to low G? I have my students, the beginners, do that kind of exercise so that they have to deal with this changing in the resistance. They're forced to do that. If you keep their exercises in a shallow range, they don't learn to adjust that way. They don't learn that. And you know how people have said for years, they've said to learn to play high, you have to learn how to play low. This is absolutely true, but it's psychological. When you learn to go from here to here, you have now learned how to go from here to here. psychologically. It's all, I shouldn't say psychologically, mentally. That's one of my students corrected me on that. Anthony says, "Surprised to see you today. Nice to see you. I am trying to move up a notch on the trumpet third and second trumpet on music for band. I practiced it, but when I put it to the actual music, it's hard." Oh, I see. Third to second. I see. So, all of that stuff is all of the things that we progress in, it's all just a matter of time spent. That second part, um, now I'm assuming, because most band directors do this now, I'm assuming you have recordings that you can play along with. And so I don't know if I told you guys this, I do this on a regular basis. This is how I practice sight reading. I have this book, March Music Melodies, okay? And this is a bunch of first trumpet parts for marches. So, like, the next time I play, next time I practice sight reading, I will pull up on YouTube 3 English marches for band. It says by Joseph Haydn. So I'll put that on, and I'll try to play this this part. The reason I started doing that was because, I'm an okay sight reader. When we had Dennis Dotson in as our guest, I told Dennis that sight reading is one of my worst qualities. Um, and I'm not saying that I'm a terrible sight reader. It's just not my best quality, right? As a trumpet player. Um, but the funny thing is that um, the stuff I was having the most difficulty reading. So I can read salsa, I can read jazz, I can read all these different styles. The stuff that was kicking my butt on the gigs was the marches, believe it or not. So I got this book out and started doing this, and now I'm not so bad on the marches anymore. Um, and that's my point, is that to get better at something, it's just a matter of spending the time doing it. It's a matter of spending that time and becoming familiar with it. Familiarity is what makes this work. Okay. Stereo Paleo says, any intel on connecting registers? Pedals feel great, middle and high when functioning. Traveling from one to the next, though. Thank you as always. All feel great individually, combining that is. So, the best, so, um, I don't know if you have my books, and I don't normally just like say the answer is my books. I don't normally do that. I think people who have been watching my Q and A's know that I don't just do that. But it's just the truth. I think that the best way to get what you're talking about is with my books. Now, the first book I would recommend is um, what I call the one range book. That's the the whole book is about what you're talking about. It's called the one range. The name of the book is One Range, and it's basically a and Anthony will tell you about this, because Anthony started following that book, I guess, about 3 months ago. And basically it's a guide on how you make that work. Now, that said, I have some specific exercises in the other books. The one range book does not have exercises in it, it's just a concept. I have exercises in my other books, like, for example, the tonalization studies are great for getting this connectivity that you're talking about. Um, let's say I'm playing up to G above the staff. Probably shouldn't do this horn. So we do 20 of those. Well, let me put it this way. You don't have to do the whole 20, but each set has 20 of those exercises in it. If you do 20 of those on a regular basis, that connectivity is going to start happening. Okay? The other exercise that I teach, well, for that matter, the long tones that I wrote work that way too. The lip slurs are also a great example of an exercise that will help with that, right? The lip slurs that I wrote, you go always to your top and to your bottom on every lip slur. But what happens with my lip slurs is you start taking out the middle notes. So, like, for example, the one that goes to high C, I don't remember which one's first. That's it. That's the correct one. Now, that's the first one in the set. The last one in the set skips all of notes. So, well, maybe I should demonstrate all of this. The second one is actually, I should probably get it out because let me grab the book. I don't want to tell you wrong. Okay, I did it right the first one. Here's the second one where we're now skipping the A and the E. Now on the third one, we're going to skip the E, the A, and then the next E and the G. Now we're going to skip the E, then the C sharp, and the E and the G. This one is basically octaves. And then the last one, we skip all of the notes in between. We just go from the bottom to the next. Now, if you do that on a regular basis, and along with all the other exercises that I teach, you will have that connectivity. You will have that better, that ability to go from one register to the next without doing any setting. And this will be even without effort because your mind will work this stuff out. So, yes, the whole thing is set up. My system is set up to make that happen, precisely what it is that you're asking about. Let me catch up on some of these. Anthony says much of it is on YouTube. Yeah, I use YouTube a lot for this kind of stuff. Anthony says spending time and doing it slowly, then speeding it up. Yes, Eddie, your book helped me. My teacher noticed my tone is fuller. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Stereo Paleo says my biggest issue is connecting with volume. What an honor, sir. Currently researching your intel. You, sir, are a godsend. Well, thank you. That's what this stuff is here for. I have a calling. You can call it a calling. I am a teacher. My desire is to help people do better on their trumpet, and more specifically with their music. So yes, the One Range book is sort of like the Lord of the Rings, the one ring that rules them all. Right? So yeah. Not that the other books don't work. All right. Stereo says, so grateful. Coffee and jams on me when we finally meet. Hey, that'd be great. That'd be great. I just wrote a piece called Stompin' Jam and had a guest over. In fact, he was the guest for the last Q and A. I had him over. We played the duet and recorded it. It's going to be published in 2 weeks, Monday. I want to do more of that. I'm looking at. So we just painted the other room, and we're looking at setting up that room to do interviews in it, and maybe Q and A's too. But we would have to do the Q and A's with the laptop. But yes, we're looking at doing more of that kind of thing. I'm very excited about that. So it looks like we're winding down here. Let's see if we can get another question in before it's time to stop. I'm glad you could join us, Stereo. Anthony says, I missed you these past few weeks. You are an extension, at least to me, of my lessons. I just don't tell my teacher, don't want to make her feel bad. I know she knows you, told me she met you once. Yeah. So any intel on connecting with extra volume, that's the same thing. It's the same thing. So volume up high is even more complicated. No, I shouldn't say complicated. We can't, that's not something that we can, uh, that's not something that we can make ourselves do. It's something that we have to um, put ourselves in that environment. Now, we do have to try to play louder, okay? Here's the problem is when you play louder, okay, so you can't play louder without pushing more air. You can't play louder with opening the aperture without opening the aperture up because you got to let more air out. But when you open the aperture up, the note drops. There's a contradiction here because the aperture opens up to play low, the aperture opens up to play loud. To play higher, you have to close the aperture a little bit. To play soft, you have to close the aperture a little bit. So to play loud up high is a contradiction. And there's nothing really that you can do to play that, to play high and play well high in the upper register. Now, here's the problem, right? Is that when you push harder, the resistance, so you end up, how am I saying this? It's very easy to get what I call a toilet sound. What is the toilet sound? It's like you're sitting on the toilet going, right? That's going to create a terrible sound, a pinched sound. For us to get a big sound in the upper register, we have to find that sweet spot, the combination of how much air is going to go through and how how much uh what am I saying? Resistance. The word escaped me for a second. How much resistance to have. Now, in this context, sometimes what happens, the reason why we don't get the volume is because we're playing with too much of a open jaw, or maybe the tongue is too low in the mouth. And so in other words, what I'm saying is if you have resistance that is too low in one area, it will cause you to make your resistance too high in another area. So like if your jaw is low and your tongue is all the way down, then it's going to force your lips to close tight. And you will not ever get full volume out of that. It will sound like a squeaky note. So one way that you can get a little bit more volume out of that in a more in more quickly is to make sure that your other sources of resistance are high enough. This includes, by the way, having a mouthpiece that's not too deep, but that's a different subject. But yes, we don't want to have a tongue that's too low and a jaw that's too low. We don't, because you know what happens is the band directors tell you that um, that you have to have an open, right? And that actually will make you pinch the notes in the upper register. So that is an issue. Now that does not negate what I was saying before. If you are playing with a entirely too open mouth, I don't see that I see that as something you're doing wrong. I don't see that negating what I said earlier. The way we play loud in the upper register is to get used to playing. It's a mental thing. It is not something we can make ourselves do. Anthony says, I missed you. Oh, wait, that's the wrong one. Charlie Porter taught me to play high, back off to get the higher notes. but they are high but sound thinny. So yes, anytime that the sound is thin, it's because the balance of the resistance is out of whack. Guillermo, hello, Guillermo. Just connecting. Can you make a summary of your ideas of this seminar, please? I'm in Latin America. Are you going to continue regularly? Yes, I do these when I have time. Stereo says Eddie for Prez. That's not going to happen. Okay, getting back to Guillermo's question. Summary. So, what did I talk about? I talked about common practice in all types of music. We were talking about Joy to the World. Second thing we talked about was how to play higher. And the higher notes come from experience, from this is, and there are, let's talk about this from a different perspective. There's more that you can do wrong to prevent you from getting the high notes than there are things you need to do right. Let's put it that way. There's more you can do wrong than there are things you need to do right. You could do the stuff that needs to be done right. You could do all those things correctly, but there could be a number of things that you're doing wrong that can prevent you from getting higher notes. So I'm not exactly sure what you mean by a summary. I think that would be a good summary there. I do believe that the best way to learn how to play to increase your range is through a good practice regime based on what I call that one range approach, and spending the time. This is the stuff I talk about in the one range book. And yes, to answer your question, Guillermo, is we are going to do this regularly. I just can't do it when I have gigs, okay? Let's see here. So you're welcome, Raimo. I had to look that up. So all right. So we are out of time. Nice to see you guys here. And we will. You're welcome, Guillermo. Raimo, Anthony, Stereo. Nice to see all of you guys. Anthony says I can get higher notes easily this past week, D above C. But when I need to play A above the staff, I can't do it fast enough, or not even get it. All right. Well, guys, thanks for hanging out. We will. So I don't have a set time for Saturday mornings to do this. I do have to work around my teaching schedule, and I have to take my wife to work sometimes. So just keep an eye open for these Q and A sessions. I'm going to try to start having more guests, maybe starting in uh, starting in January. I would like to have Anthony over, and also Mr. Walker. So one of these days, Anthony, will have you over, and we can hang out. And anybody else on this that is local, we can have you guys come over. All right. I don't have the technology to um, stream. And well, when I say technology, my computer's not powerful enough to do live interviews. So anyway, thanks again for hanging out. God bless you guys. And we will see you next week. I'm sure we can do next week. I think next week is good. All right. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.